Shadow the Hedgehog, the ultimate life form. He has had a very complicated existence. Created by Professor Gerald Robotnik as a method to cure those with incurable diseases, including the professor's granddaughter Maria, of whom Shadow was close with. Shadow was eventually captured by Gunn because they considered him dangerous. During the mission to capture him, Maria met an untimely end, and as a result, Professor Gerald went nuts and swore revenge. 50 years later, Professor Gerald's grandson Dr. Eggman freed Shadow, and the two worked together to take over the world using the space colony Ark. Though Shadow really wanted to destroy the world to avenge Maria, because that's what he believed she wanted. Eventually he came around to help everyone save the world against Professor Gerald's revenge plot, which involved a colony drop and encountering the prototype ultimate life form, the Bio-Lizard, after properly remembering Maria's final words to him. Shadow, I beg of you, please do it for me, for a better future, for all the people who live on that planet. Give them a chance to be happy. Let them live for their dreams. Shadow, I know you can do it. That's the reason you were brought into this world. In the aftermath, he apparently died, but was secretly rescued by Eggman and placed in stasis. However, Shadow lost his memory as he didn't recognize Rouge the Bat when she first discovered him, nor the other characters when he encountered them. Though it didn't stop him from teaming up with everyone to save the world again, this time against Eggman's traitorous robot, Neo Metal Sonic. Shadow's memory issue wouldn't be resolved until more elements from his past arrive. An alien army called the Black Arms, led by their leader, Black Doom. With them came more revelations for Shadow. 50 years ago, Professor Gerald struck a deal with Black Doom to help create Shadow, by donating some of his DNA in exchange for the 7 Chaos Emeralds. That would explain going from a giant bio-lizard on life support to a small black hedgehog modeled after an ancient mural. Now Black Doom's here to collect, and to conquer and consume the world, and has tried to get Shadow to side with him. But the discovery of an old message by Professor Gerald had more revelations about Shadow. Turns out he was more than a means to cure incurable diseases. He was also meant to be a protector of the world against threats like Black Doom. Said recording was made before the professor went mad given the presence of a still-alive Maria. Shadow proceeded to kill Black Doom and obliterate his remaining forces using the Ark's Eclipse cannon. Shadow would then go on to serve as the world's protector in Maria's name. You might be wondering, why the heck am I spouting Shadow's backstory when chances are most of you probably know this already? Well, it's because these events, namely Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Heroes, and Shadow the Hedgehog, not only happened in the main game continuity, but in other media outlets like, say, the Archie comics. The Reboot Era to be specific. Long story short, thanks to legal shenanigans, the Archie Sonic comics were rebooted, using, in my opinion, the excellent crossover with Mega Man to justify why Sonic's world ended up differently afterwards. Pre-reboot was a hodgepodge of the cartoons, games, and original material mashed together. And as a result, some characters' backstories were odd compared to their game counterparts. Post-reboot brought things much closer to the game universe, just with elements of the cartoons sprinkled in here and there. This means that, again, the aforementioned Adventure 2, Heroes, and Shadow the Hedgehog happened in this universe. Though in the case of the last game, it's kinda hard to pinpoint what events actually happened, given the nature of the game. What is confirmed to have happened is the confrontation with the Gun Commander and the final story. And with the Black Arms gone, Shadow in this universe is honoring Maria's wish to protect the world by joining Gun, along with fellow Team Dark members Rouge the Bat and E123 Omega. But what if I were to tell you that not all of the Black Arms were destroyed? That a small faction was still out there, learned what Shadow did to Black Doom, and are planning their revenge. And it involves the creation of a Darkling. A Darkling that might prove to be a match for the ultimate life form. And yet, has a desire to try and tempt his brother over to his side. As previously mentioned, there was another, smaller contingent of Black Arms forces. Led by Black Doom's lesser mind Black Death, they were busy with another conquest, while the main force went to Sonic's world. But thanks to the Hive Mind, Black Death would learn of Black Doom's downfall, and Shadow being responsible. Knowing his faction is the last of the Black Arms, and that they wouldn't stand a chance against Shadow, Black Death decided to create the perfect countermeasure to the ultimate life form, Eclipse the Darkling. Eclipse, for all intents and purposes, is Shadow if he was 100% Black Arms. No trace of Hedgehog DNA at all. His design is unique. Black eyes with yellow irises, the claws, the red and gray coloring and patterns, and most notably, a long tail. That said, he does share traits with Shadow. They have a similar height and build, a similar, for lack of a better term, hairstyle, and both could use abilities like Chaos Control. However, being a counter to Shadow, Eclipse would have abilities the Ultimate Life Form would not. More on that later. Even their names have a similar yet different theme around them. Shadows and eclipses involve dark areas made when objects block a portion of a light source. The difference being that an eclipse is generally related to a celestial body like a moon and could produce a shadow on a larger scale compared to shadows made using trees or buildings. In other words, Eclipse is a fitting name for a Darkling meant to overtake a shadow. While he is fully dedicated to the Black Arms, Eclipse is not a part of the Hive Mind, though he does have authority over the lesser Black Arm grunts. His independence allows him to come up with ways to deal with Shadow, whether it be elimination or convincing Shadow to join him as he believes they'll be unstoppable together. Eclipse's independent thoughts would often clash with his master Black Death, but ultimately Black Death would entertain Eclipse's ideas due to his forces needing every advantage they could against Shadow. This would eventually backfire on the Black Arms, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Even with their answer to Shadow, the Black Arms need another advantage against him and the rest of Sonic's world. Eclipse came up with a solution, the Dark Arms. Basically the Black Arms version of the Wisps. They even went to Planet Wisp to gather the necessary materials. Don't worry, they spared the planet, much to Black Death's irritation. They were in a hurry to Sonic's world to enact their revenge. Fortunately for Sonic's world, Gunn was able to detect Black Death's comet approaching the planet and had a plan to deal with it before it lands. Good thing too, because during this time, Sonic's world was in pieces a la Sonic Unleashed. The last thing the people needed to worry about was a rerun of Shadow the Hedgehog on top of the emerging Dark Gaia monsters. So Gunn sent Team Dark along with some soldiers up to the comet to destroy it with a nuke. As Shadow scouted ahead, he would come face to face with Eclipse. During their confrontation, the two were evenly matched. Sort of. One of Eclipse's anti-Shadow abilities was to neutralize Shadow's ability to utilize Chaos Control. Though Eclipse didn't want to destroy Shadow, he was that committed to turning his brother back over to the Black Arm's side, utilizing a little mind manipulation to help convince him. However, his mind wasn't strong enough, so Black Death lended a hand, and the two eventually succeeded in having Shadow join them. Eclipse, along with Shadow, headed off with some Black Arms forces to deal with Gunn and the nuke. This resulted in Shadow fighting Rouge and Omega, and Eclipse capturing the humans to be used as food for the Dark Arms, as well as securing the nuke. This Black Arms victory was only temporary, as Shadow was able to regain his senses thanks to Rouge's verbal jabs at his pride, getting him to fight back from the inside. This allowed Shadow to tell Omega to shoot at Death's eye, chasing it away and breaking the link. Shadow would go on to confront Black Death, leaving Rouge and Omega to free the humans and confront Eclipse for control of the nuke. That's when the Darkling revealed another countermeasure meant for Shadow, the ability to increase in size and strength. However, he couldn't maintain his supersized form as it drained a lot of energy. And thanks to a drawn-out physical fight with Omega, Eclipse couldn't hold on to his large shape and started to shrink back to his normal size. As a consequence of using so much energy, he's left in a weakened state. The fight bought enough time for Rouge to activate the nuke, sealing the Black Arms' fate. Kinda. The main Black Arms forces would perish, but Black Death was able to load the Dark Arms and Eclipse onto an escape ship before the comet's destruction. Eclipse, while being dragged to the ship, realized he made a mistake in not fulfilling his purpose of killing Shadow, and begged for Black Death to let him help his master. That would be the last time the two communicated with each other, as not long after, Shadow vaporized Black Death, and the comet blew up. It was at this moment, as he cradled the lifeless Desai, that Eclipse swore vengeance against Shadow. However, the escape ship needed to find a safe place to land on the fractured planet. It just so happens the ship was heading towards Angel Island. The landing was all but smooth, and as a result, all but 4 of the Dark Arm pods were destroyed, much to Eclipse's horror. His attitude quickly turns around when he not only notices those 4 survivors, he saw them emerge from their pods. Eclipse is now dedicated to the well-being of his Dark Arms. He treats them as his children, giving them names and feeding them food he harvested from Mushroom Hill Zone. But Eclipse knew that they needed to get much stronger to stand a chance against Shadow and the world. It just so happens that Eclipse was able to sense an incredible power on the island. That power being, of course, the Master Emerald. As he's scouting the place, he spotted Rouge, Omega, and Knuckles. Gun tracked Eclipse's ship to the island if you're wondering. Overhearing their conversation, not only does Eclipse receive confirmation about the Master Emerald's existence, Shadow's on the island too. He figured he can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, although he had a lingering affection for his brother. So at the Master Emerald Shrine, after doing a small bit of mind screwing, Eclipse gave Shadow 1 more chance to join him. But seeing as Shadow's fully dedicated to eradicating him and his kind, Eclipse himself became fully dedicated to eliminating Shadow. This involved once again growing into his supersized form. Unlike the fight with Omega, Eclipse was able to dominate his opponent. Not only does the giant form increase his strength, it increases his ability to cancel Shadow's powers, meaning Chaos Sphere and Chaos Blast won't work as well. However, Shadow's not one for giving up. He was quickly able to turn the tables once he sampled some Master Emerald energy and knocked Eclipse out of his supersized form. Literally. Having failed to kill Shadow, Eclipse escaped and made his way back to his Dark Arms. After explaining his failure to capture the Master Emerald and killing Shadow, the Dark Arms eagerly want to help Eclipse. He was hesitant since they were only a few days old, but realized they want to fulfill the function they were made for. Let's briefly talk about the Dark Arms. As mentioned earlier, they're the Black Arms version of the Wisps. With these 4 here, you can see some resemblance to the Wisps they're actually based on. Even their names are a sort of twisted amalgamation of the Wisp's color and power. Kriegel is Crimson Eagle, Sizer is Scion Laser, Regenta is Magenta Rhythm, and Blurk is Blue Cube. Admittedly, the last one seemed a bit of a stretch. Also, like the genuine articles, the Dark Arms have the ability to merge with an individual, Eclipse in this case, to allow them access to their powers, meaning they have some form of Hyper-Gohan energy. Here are the abilities each Dark Arm grants Eclipse. Blurk gives Eclipse impenetrable armor, as well as additional strength and durability. Kriegel provides Eclipse with wings for aerial combat. Sizer allows Eclipse to shoot lasers from his hand. And Regenta? We'll get to that one in a moment. With the Dark Arms by his side, Eclipse was able to successfully steal the Master Emerald and secure a ride off the island, while giving Rouge and Omega some payback. He got away with this because the only 2 that could possibly stop him were busy fighting each other for ownership of the Master Emerald. Once they got word that Eclipse stole it, Shadow and Knuckles stopped fighting in order to pursue him. All parties converged at Launch Base Zone, where the gun airship is parked. While Shadow and Eclipse duke it out once again, Knuckles realized that neither Shadow nor himself are at full strength thanks to their brawl, and even if they successfully drive off Eclipse, Shadow would go after the Emerald himself. So in order to prevent anyone from taking it, he did the one thing he swore he'd never do again: shatter the Master Emerald and scattering the pieces. With the world currently broken into floating landmasses, Angel Island would be fine. Knuckles would have to hunt down all the pieces and bring the restored Master Emerald back to the island before the world gets put back together, which he eventually does. With 3 of his Dark Arms exhausted, and both Shadow and an angry Knuckles bearing down on him, Eclipse utilized Regenta's power, Sonic Cannon, to stun the 2 long enough to get him and his Dark Arms off the island. They crash on another part of the world. Exhausted but alive, they wait for the day they'd have their revenge. And this would be the last time they appeared in the Archie Sonic books, because not long after the Shattered World crisis was resolved, the 2 Archie Sonic books would be cancelled, and the comic license would move over to IDW Publishing. It's a shame this happened, as I believe there was much more story possibilities with Eclipse. He was a major example of the trope, even evil has loved ones. While he was a member of an alien race bent on conquering and consuming the world, he clearly cared for his Black Arms family. So much so that he believed he could sway Shadow back to their side, and was genuinely disappointed, if not sad, that didn't work out. When he realized Black Death was going to sacrifice himself to save him and the Dark Arms, Eclipse was deeply upset, wanting to go back and save him, while realizing his mistake of sparing Shadow. And when he essentially became a parent to the Dark Arms, he did the things all good parents would do, feeding and taking care of them, worrying for their safety, compliment and praise them, and comfort them when they're exhausted. It's a complicated situation with Eclipse. You want to hate him because of what he did to some of your favorite characters, but at the same time, he had moments where you kind of feel bad for the guy. Plus, Shadow having his own rival benefited his character. In fact, the two are more alike than even they realize. Besides having the same blood and similar powers, both of them lost individuals they considered family while swearing revenge against those responsible. The difference is Shadow was able to eventually move on, while Eclipse doesn't. He wouldn't even get the opportunity, if it was even possible, due to the book's cancellation. Because of his limited appearances, the only characters Eclipse interacted with were Knuckles, Team Dark, and a couple of Reboot exclusive characters. He would never go on to meet Sonic and his friends, or Dr. Eggman. I mean, the interaction between Sonic and Eclipse alone would be interesting considering Sonic's resemblance to Shadow, and the fact that Sonic's the only character that has merged with Wisp to utilize their powers. For the record, the Reboot Era had Sonic Colors happening before Sonic Unleashed. Yeah. We won't even get the chance to see how Eclipse and the Dark Arms handle the, to them, alien environment of Sonic's world. Their trek through Angel Island and dealing with its various traps in order to get to the gun airship felt like a taste of what could have been. With the, at the time of this writing, recent announcement of a Sonic Generations remaster that adds a new Shadow campaign featuring the return of Black Doom, and the third Sonic movie on the way, I'd figured I'd spotlight a unique villain that has ties to the Ultimate Life Form. Chances are, outside of fan material, we may never see this individual again. But we must always remember this perfected living weapon. This Darkling that, as he puts it, was created to block the last light of hope. We must always remember Eclipse, brother of Shadow the Hedgehog.